Hi, my name's Emily Rose Adams. Welcome to Presently Presents.
I was like, I know this is it. I just know I'm perfect for this show. And I know that when I went into the audition, it just felt right. And I was like, I'd never had that before. I'd never gone into a room and thought, this is the right fit.
If somebody had said to me even back at 2018, Steve, in a couple of years, you'll be warming up for Chris Evans, Graham Norton will be handing over to you, you'll have Jeremy Kyle wanting you to guest on his TV show, I'd be like, what?
I would say just persistence is key, firstly. And secondly, ideas. Like, if you come with an amazing idea and they like it, they will probably commission it.
In this podcast, I talk to presenters and media personalities about their lives, careers, and the challenges they've had to overcome to make it in the industry. For our first ever Presently Presents episode, we're speaking with an amazing Scottish presenter who's bursting with loads of energy. You may have seen her pop up on your TV screens in the mornings, on the weekend on ITV Scrambled, or even heard her on BBC Radio 1 and Fun Kids Radio. She's a really busy girl, so we're very lucky to be speaking to her today. She loves to wake up the nation with all of her jokes and fun and presenting while she's travelling. She's even presented whilst zip wiring in Mexico, which is very impressive. She loves to chat to up-and-coming musicians in the industry and loves having a good old chinwag with game changers of the future. Our very first Presently Presents guest is Robyn Richford.
I need to just take you everywhere with me. That's amazing.
I know. Did you like that intro?
Yeah, but I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot about that stuff.
It's amazing what you can find out through Instagram.
Yeah, I know. Scary as well, right?
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. It's really nice.
Thanks so much for joining us. How do you feel about being our first guest on Presently Presents?
A bit pressure, to be fair. I'm like, hope don't disappoint.
No, not at all. We're really excited to have you. It seems like you are a really busy presenter who's absolutely nailing it. As I said, I've seen you on Instagram, seeing a lot of your updates, and it seems like you're one of those presenters who's like just coming up there and is like really busy, getting really popular and in demand. So I thought you would be like perfect person to start the podcast with, and we can speak to you about like how you've got to where you are now and where you started. So to begin, like, what does the average day look like for you when you're working?
It's a tricky one. You're going to hear this all the time, I guess, but for presenters, there isn't really like an average day. It depends what I'm doing, really. But I would say I've been trying to, which it would probably be a top tip, is like get some sort of routine into like my life. Because otherwise it's like, gosh, it's waking up at 2:30 in the morning if you're doing radio, or you're waking up at 6 for telly, and then other days like you're not working to the evening, so you could just lay in bed till 12. So that's not good. And I think as well, like the highs and the lows, like I don't think that's very good for you. So I've been trying to get up at like 8 o'clock, have a little bit of a morning routine. I'm big into my running. Trying to get more into my fitness in general as well. And then I'm off to work, so I'll head into London. I do live in London. And then I'll go to whatever studio I'm required at that day. But to be honest, it doesn't really have a typical day, sadly.
Yeah, so I'm guessing you're freelance, because that can just, in any industry, I guess being freelance can bring all sorts of different experiences, but especially when you're a presenter, there's like, every day can be completely different. How do you find the early mornings, by the way? Because I've done them on and off for about 6 years, different breakfast shows, and for some reason I always end up called back to doing a breakfast show, and I'm like, why? Like, I love it. It's really good fun. There's this energy in the mornings. I don't know if you found that, but the waking up, when you've done it for like a while, it can start to really wear you down.
It's really funny you say that, because I was actually chatting to someone the other day, and they said, where in radio do you normally sit? And I said, I don't know why, but I always end up with the early slots, whether that's covering the breakfast or early breakfast. But yeah, that's tough. I'm not a morning person, which is hard for people to believe, but I'm really not a morning person. So that's why you might have seen on my Instagram, I'm a bit crazy and go for a run at 2:30 in the morning, because there's no other way to wake myself up.
That is absolutely insane. As I said, I've worked in breakfast shows for a while, and I've never in my life come across anyone who goes and exercises before they get to work. Actually, Chris Evans does. He runs to Virgin Radio.
See, there you go.
I guess because he's on. Yeah, he arrives at like 6:15, just walks straight into the studio, quite sweaty, and then gets going. But he must leave the house at about 5, but not 2:30. That's actually incredible.
I know. I mean, I don't think I could do it every day, but I do think that like it's the only way to get me up and going, because otherwise I'd just go in the car and I would just be like snoozing all the way there, you know.
Yeah, I stick to caffeine, but maybe I should try your technique. So you've been working at Radio 1, which is incredible. Like that is like absolute life goals for so many presenters. Like how did you get there? What were the steps, and how did it feel to do your first show on BBC Radio 1?
Terrifying. No, I went through the presenter the Christmas presenter search, I guess, that they've been doing for the last few years. So I went via that route, just sent off my demo, and then I went in to do the Christmas cover, and then I was really lucky and got asked back to cover some more. And then it's just kind of how it goes from there. You just do kind of cover if and when they need it, and as much and as little as they want you to. And yeah, I mean, it was amazing. That first show, again, early, I was doing the breakfast. And yeah, I think I was just shaking when I came out after 4 hours live. I was like shaking like a leaf because I just hadn't eaten anything. The adrenaline was just like running through me. But I absolutely loved it, and it's live radio and live telly is a drug that you cannot get enough of, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it becomes very addictive. And then I think afterwards it makes going back to any other kind of industry or job just seem impossible, because you're like, but how will I survive without my drug of adrenaline every day or my dose of it?
That's it. The live just adds that extra something, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really impressive that you've nailed it with Radio 1. But back to the beginning for you, where did it all start? Like, did you always want to be a presenter, or was this something kind of, did you do like performing arts
Yeah,
before?
I did actually do performing arts before. I basically knew I wanted to work in entertainment, but wasn't really sure in what capacity. And I'm from like a little town outside of Glasgow, and they have amazing place to grow up, but there isn't a huge entertainment scene, put it that way. And I just thought, okay, let me just use what I have at the minute to get me down to London, and then I'll figure it out. Which is exactly what I did. So I used the kind of dance skills that I had, went to performing arts school down here for 3 years. And then when I actually graduated, I did perform as a dancer for a few years, just because I had trained in it. But I kind of knew probably in my first year that I was like, this isn't it for me. I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't know presenting was a job, which is mad when you think about it now, but I didn't know that that was an option. I had obviously seen people on telly, but I didn't really know what that meant. And I definitely didn't think it was for someone like me from, a small town in Glasgow. Um, and then, yeah, so when I was kind of performing, I always kind of knew when I'd got to the dance school and everyone was like, my dream's to be in Chicago and my dream's to be on the West End and and I was like, uh-oh, I've got this wrong. I don't want to do any of it.
It's quite a good transition though. It's not completely unrelated.
No, it's not actually, which I didn't really think that the skills of performing arts helped. But like, for instance, I knew how to learn a script. That really helped. I knew how to perform under pressure. I knew how to, I guess, present the best version of me, even on a day that I wasn't feeling like it. So yeah, there was definitely skills that I'd learned through performing arts that definitely helped. But it is a fine line, because I think sometimes if you can come from performing arts, sometimes you can go into presenting and think it's a performance, and it's just not. That's not how that translates, sort of thing. I've definitely seen that before, especially in the kids TV, which is obviously where I started. I've seen people in performing arts come in and they think it's going to be the performance that you would do on stage, and it's a different skill. It's not quite as animated.
Hey folks, Emily here, and I'm interrupting this fascinating conversation, which I know can be irritating, but I wanted to ask you to do me a small favour that will help in a huge way. If you like this podcast, please subscribe now, wherever you're listening, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google, or YouTube. Then leave a rating and a review. Every subscriber and every rating helps me to keep this podcast going. Thank you. And now back to our conversation.
So do you like doing kids presenting? Is that something that you want to do more of? Because you present also on Fun Kids Radio, and you were obviously on Scrambled, which was an amazingly popular TV show for kids. Or are you kind of more interested in doing stuff for grown-ups as well?
I think grown-ups now. I think kids TV was always my dream. I just kind of had this vision of Ant and Dec, Cat Daly, you know, the gunging, the silliness. Like, I just loved that, and Cat Daly's always been my inspiration. So I was like, I want to do kids telly because that's what she did. And then I guess once you've been in it for a few years, you're like, okay, so let's do the progression. So I'm kind of progressing now. I'm obviously still at Fun Kids, which I do love as a radio station, and that was my first foot into national radio. So that was great. It still is great. And then I think now it's kind of like just progressing from there. But I do still do stuff in the kids space because obviously I'm known for that. And it's something that I'm still interested in, but I'm not like actively pursuing, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess when you think about a lot of our favourite presenters, you know, I wanted to present when I watched TV as a child, and I used to idolise these people, and they were all kids presenters because we were children. But you see their careers and they all develop, and most of them leave that world as I guess some of them grow out of it. You get older and you kind of have other interests. So yeah, it's really interesting that you started in kids. It's really fun, a fun way to get into it, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just over the moon when I got that Scrambled job. That was like, for me, I've made it, which is funny now. But
so you've got lots of little fans, young fans.
Yeah, I've got lots of fans. It's really funny if you're at a wedding or like family event or something, and people go, "Oh, you're on the telly, should I know you?" And I'm like, well, if you're under 10, maybe. There's usually one or two little kids at whatever family event is. It's like, oh, I know her from the telly. Funny.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's a good fan base.
Yeah, they're sweet.
So you obviously started in kids presenting. How did the journey look for you? So from the very beginning, you wanted to be a presenter. How did you get from that to now working for the BBC and huge programs?
So basically I was performing obviously at dance college, and I got injured in my first year. And I was predominantly a dancer, cannot sing a note, not a single note. So I knew that, like, if I couldn't dance, like, I didn't have a job. So it was actually my mom that said to me, "Oh, what are you going to do if you can't dance?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't really know." And I'd kind of figured out that, that wasn't necessarily the dream for me, but I also was like, I don't know what is. And she said, "Okay, why don't you try this presenting course? I think you'd be good at it. All you do is talk and blah, blah, blah." And, you just think it's your mother being your mother. So yeah, I went along anyway, and I actually just fell in love with presenting, to be honest. The course itself was okay. But I was like, oh, okay, it just felt right. I was like, this is actually where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, from that point on, I ran around London with my friend, and I paid him, of course. And we made a little show reel together, and popped it on YouTube. And then when I was dancing away. And a producer who used to be on the CBBC, who was starting an agency at the time, he said he saw my show reel and was like, "Are you still interested in doing it?" I said, "Yeah, I'm currently in the middle of whatever sea I was in the middle of on a cruise ship. But when I come home, then yeah, for sure." And then from that point, I kind of just built it up, small job after small job. And just got my name out there, and anyone that gave me a microphone, I spoke into it, basically. And then that was kind of my journey, and I got my first job with a company called Engage Sports Media, who were bringing out a new kids app. So it was like Netflix, but just for kids. and it was like an adventure show, and I did it with a guy called Joe Tasker, who is now presenting CBBC's Saturday Mashup. So he went into CBBC as well, and yeah, we did it, and we kind of like basically tried all these mad challenges to try and compete against each other for this kind of Tough Mudder crown, whatever that may be. So yeah, that was my first like actual job, and it was the first time that I had a director, and it was the first time that I kind of had someone to be like, no, you can't just do what you want because you're not running around with your friend, you know? So yeah, that was a really good training ground for me, I felt. And then from there, I just built it up job by job, I guess day by day.
Yeah, so was it one of those things where you felt like once you had a few, I guess you could call them clients, you know, people that you worked for, there was kind of a momentum, or were there kind of gaps in between where you kind of would have to look for work? Because there's a lot of people who have signed up to Presently, and, you know, who I know as well, who it's just getting that momentum going and having the confidence to really give it everything. When you're at the very start, it can be quite a challenge. So how did you find that process?
Hard. In one word,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's not for the faint-hearted. Yeah, I kind of try and look at it now. I mean, I've obviously got lots of years to kind of reflect, but at the time it didn't feel like that. I just kind of look at it as if it was kind of like a chart. And if you're kind of zooming out on the chart, as long as that line's going upwards, it doesn't matter if you zoom in and it's kind of a bit more of a zigzag, you know, some days you're down, some days you're up, some days you're down, some weeks you're up, you know, and it kind of doesn't matter as long as that kind of main chart is heading up. I think that is the kind of one piece of advice I would give, because it's hard, right? And you can sit there and you can go, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month, or even this week, you know, sometimes it gets to that point. So it definitely is a journey, I would say. But I feel like it's almost one you've kind of got to go through. It's kind of like there's just no way around it. And I don't think that you can come out the other side without having kind of done it. And I've met people that, you know, have done, you know, had a much smoother journey. But I almost feel like the minute then there's a bump in the roads, it's trickier, right? Because they haven't ever had to deal with that. So they don't really know. So you're just almost like, I just keep saying to myself in the bad chapters, like, this is the bad chapter of the book.
I know, and it happens to everyone. I mean, it's one of those things in the arts in general, in all sorts of avenues. You know, you have peaks and troughs, so you'll do a job and then for a while it'll be really quiet, and for some people the summer is amazing every year. For some people the summer is absolutely dead, and you compare yourself, and it's very hard at points to kind of push through in those moments. But I think often the people who get to these high levels of success, obviously huge element of it is talent and personality, and that's what it's all about, but also it's the people who really just carry on and push through and don't give up in those moments of tough times where you're living in especially cities like London. I mean, the UK in general, obviously costs right now are quite high, but especially in London, the price of living is crazy. So it's that question of, for a lot of people, how do I survive when, you know, I've got this amazing presenting opportunities just popped up, but then the rest of the month is really quiet. So, I mean, when I started, I was doing all sorts of random jobs. And for me, I can tell it's just, you know, it just gets better and better over time, the more experience and clients you build up. But those first few years in particular can be a real challenge. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And my top tip would be like, have a job that is just purely for money when you're starting out. So have a job that, you know, if you had to cancel last minute, yes, the boss of that job would be angry or upset, but it kind of wouldn't matter, because it's not a career job. It's a bartending job. It's a you know, it's a restaurant. It's whatever it is that is just money for you. I would definitely recommend that, because I know that it allowed me to make decisions. So I used to work in like promotions, like events and things like that. And it allowed me to make the best decisions for the long term. I've always played the long game, and you can if you have another source of income. You can't if you're not. So you can find yourself doing presenting jobs that perhaps aren't aligned with where you want to go in the future if you just need the money. And so trying to get yourself out of that situation, I think, would be my top tip. Just find yourself until you got enough that you can support yourself. Then I personally wouldn't dump that side job just yet. That would be my top tip.
I think that's a really good tip. And I think when you've kind of eventually managed to get rid of a lot of that stuff, you don't look back and regret doing it. You know, it kind of builds your character. It's part of who you are and it's part of the journey. So although it can be a bit tough at the time, it's definitely some good advice there, having experienced it myself as well. So what would you say has been your career highlight? What's the moment where you've thought, this is my favourite career moment right now?
Oh, I've had a cute couple now. I think probably the day I found out I had scrambled, because for me that had just been such I mean, it wasn't a long time in the grand scheme of life, and I know that I was much luckier than I know a lot of other people are, but it was a long graft and it felt like the largest mountain that I'd ever climbed, and I just went in with blind faith. That is all I had, was just faith that it was going to happen. And I think,
how did it come about, the job opportunity?
I had basically had the Scramble presenter at the time, Kerry, had come in to like basically shadow, like in our radio. It was just our community radio that we were doing. She was actually shadowing my co-host. It wasn't me, because I was pretty new in radio as well. And she was shadowing and she was chatting and whatnot. And she said, "Oh, I just scrambled." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to do that show." I knew it really well. They had an amazing Scottish presenter on it already, Ariel Free, who's on Radio 1 as well. And she was brilliant. And I was like, "Oh, I'd love to do that." And then that was kind of it. And then maybe a couple of months later, Kerry had said, "Oh, I think Ariel might be leaving because she's going on to Radio 1, and she'd kind of progressed and whatnot." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, amazing!" But at the same time, I'd actually emailed a new agent, because I hadn't had representation up until that point. Had found myself I had, but previously, a lot of years before. But I was on my own, and I thought, "Oh, I probably need to take that step now." So I'd messaged an agent, said, "Listen, this is my stuff." And he messaged back and said, "I think you're great. We don't have a chance to chat to you just yet. But there's this thing came up at ITV that I think you'd be perfect for. Can I put you forward anyway? And you don't have to go with us, but let me just put you forward." And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Is it scrambled?" I was like, because Kerry had mentioned it. And he said, "Yes, it is." And I was like, "Brilliant." So he put me forward for it, even though I hadn't signed with them or anything, which was amazing. And then, so then he said, "Okay, they want to see you." So I went in on the Friday. I did my audition on the Friday, and I had the job on the Monday. And it was the longest weekend of my life.
Wow. That is amazing, because a lot of these opportunities, they drag on for weeks, months, various casting calls, callbacks,
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really amazing process, very fast.
Very fast.
When you got that phone call, what was your reaction?
Oh my gosh, cried my eyes out. I was on, I knew it was good anyway because he called me. So I either thought he's ringing me to let me down gently because he doesn't know me well enough yet. And I did feel bad for him because he didn't know me well enough. We ended up being friends obviously after that, but because I did sign with him in the end. But but I was like, he doesn't.
I'm sure you did after
Yeah,
that.
yeah, of course. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't no, like I thought it was good because he rang me, but then I thought maybe he's just let me down gently because I'd said to him, I really want this. This is it. I can feel it." And he was really like, I guess, trying to like manage my expectations a little bit. And he was like, these processes can be long, exactly like you say. They might have you in. And I was like, no, I was like, I can feel it. I was like, I know this is it. I just know I'm perfect for this show. And I know that when I went into the audition, it just felt right. And I was like, I'd never had that before. I'd never gone into a room and thought, this is the right fit. And then obviously as the weekend went on, I'd talked myself out of that confidence and I'd gone, I've not got it. Anyway, so when he rang me, I cried my eyes out. He said, "Are you sitting down?" And I thought, oh no, this isn't good. And I was like, yeah, I'm sitting down. He's like, where are you? And I was like, oh gosh. I was like, he thinks I'm about to be really upset. And I said, oh, I'm just in my flat. And he was like, okay. And he was like, you've done it. And I was like, what? um,
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing.
it was, I've never experienced euphoria before, but I don't actually know if that is it, but it was very, very, very close if that wasn't it. Because I was just in tears and in shock, and I just couldn't believe that I'd actually done it. Because
A dream.
yeah, it was really strange. I think I'd had blind faith that it was going to happen because I had to, right? But I had this also in my head that like, this might not happen because there's actually not that many kids TV jobs in the UK. There's just actually not that many of them. I was like, I could probably count on my hand. There's probably about 10 jobs. So there's 10 spaces really.
Oh, tiny.
Yeah, it's especially kids TV that I wanted to do, because the younger ones is like CBBS, and that was like a bit younger and it wasn't what I was aiming for. But yeah, the age group that I was going for, there wasn't that many.
We get a lot of people who message us and say, like, on Presently, you know, we want to be a kids presenter. Have you got any kids opportunities? But they are so incredibly rare. When they come up, they are like gold dust. And, you know, and even rarer is that they're an open casting. It's quite rare to find that. So, yeah, I mean, you're a rare breed, a kids TV presenter.
I know.
That sounds like such an incredible moment when you found out you got the job.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was just incredible. And I remember mom and dad were on holiday and I had to ring them, and they were driving and I was like, pull over. And they were like, oh my gosh, something bad's happened. I just remember like crying my eyes out on FaceTime and just being like, I did it. I actually did it. And they were just like elated.
Why are
me.
parents' reactions always that something
Bad's happened?
something bad has happened? Especially, I guess, if your mum was the one who like encouraged you to do the presenting course in the first place, I bet she was over the moon for you.
Yeah, my mum and dad are just like, they are gold dust, and I'm very, very aware of that. Like, I'm so lucky. But yeah, they have always believed in me from, you know, tiny little kid. And I'm really lucky like that. They've not always kind of gone along with the journey in the sense of like, they'll challenge me, you know, they'll really challenge me to make sure that it is what I want, or they'll push me out my comfort zone. They're not afraid to tell me the truth. But without them, absolutely, yeah, exactly, it would not have been here for sure. So it's definitely a joint effort. Absolutely.
And I guess for a lot of freelance people pursuing this kind of industry, like having people backing you like that is another crucial step to surviving those bumps in the road that we spoke about earlier.
Yes. It's true.
So for those who are brand new and starting out, thinking about becoming a presenter, they're in their first year, what piece of advice would you offer them?
I think my main piece of advice would be figure out where you want to end up. I've heard other presenters, they do it different. They kind of, you know, go with the flow and see where the flow takes them, which I certainly do in the kind of, I guess, on the journey to it. But I always know where I want to end up. Like I kind of talk about A, B, and C, and I'm always like, you need to know where C is, because if you don't know where C is, you can't possibly make the right decisions in A and B to get you to C. And you could wake up a couple of years down the line and you're way past where you needed to actually be. So I think it's like, know where you want to end up and trust the process that it takes to get there. And say no if it doesn't fit. And that can be very, 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 very hard. I'm fully aware of that. But that would be my advice, because I get presenters all the time in my DMs, you know, like, what can I do? You know, what should I do next? And how do I start? And all of those things. And I just say, you have to find your voice. You have to know where you want to be, because if you don't know where you're headed, it's almost just like blindly getting in a car. It's okay to figure yourself out, and for that destination to change, because it might do, you know, I mean, mine certainly has. But I think if you don't know where you're headed, it's a even more bumpy road, I would say.
So you're a girl with a plan.
Always a girl with a plan. Always have a plan. And like I say, sometimes that plan changes, you know, like an opportunity presents itself, and I'm definitely open to things that I haven't considered. But I do think that it allowed me to kind of shape my career in the way that I wanted. I definitely said no to things that financially would have been great. But actually it wasn't taking me forward, and actually I said, okay, let me just serve a few more burgers instead, because actually this could take me down a road that's not actually where I want to go, in which case it's just a waste, and then you've not got the capacity for the things you actually want.
Yeah, I think I might know the type of jobs you're thinking about. And I guess it's also about protecting your brand, isn't it? So, you know, these things, they stay online. They, especially with the online world, you can't really escape your past sometimes. So if you've said yes to a few jobs that would have paid the bills, but you weren't really wanting to kind of do in the future, you can kind of get typecast as that sort of presenter. So that is a really good piece of advice for people starting out. And what's next for Robyn Richford in the presenting world?
Good question. Still very much on the journey. I think for me, I'm going to move more into the entertainment space now. Now that I'm kind of, I've obviously done the kids stuff. I'm going on tour with the BBC in a couple of weeks. Oh my gosh! And yes, in a month. So yeah, it goes quick, doesn't it? It's like a celebration of 100 years of the BBC. They actually had some earlier on in the year as well. And yeah, so I'm going to go with them for a few months. That'd be lovely. And yeah, and then just more into the entertainment space, I think, is kind of where I kind of see myself now. And the kids stuff is great because it kind of still works, and it's still an audience that I'm very familiar with. And I'll still be at Fun Kids for the foreseeable, and a little bit more cover on Radio 1. So yes, that is what's currently in the pipeline.
That's really exciting. We can't wait to see more of you, Robyn.
Oh, bless you.
So where can we follow you online?
Robyn Richford, everywhere, pretty much. Robyn with a Y. Should probably say that.
Oh, yeah. Is that a Scottish thing? No.
No, I think it's a girl-boy thing as far as I'm aware, but I might be completely wrong. I feel like it's, yeah, because I've got friends that are called Robyn that are boys, and they're definitely I's, so that's where I'm going, but I don't know.
Robyn with a Y.
Robyn with a Y, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Robyn, for taking the time to speak with us. It's been so good hearing all of your updates, how you got to where you are and where you're going to go in the future. And we can't wait to follow the rest of your journey.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So that was it, guys, our very first Presentally Presents podcast episode. I really hope you enjoyed listening and hearing all about Robyn Richford's story. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, as we will have more episodes on the way for you very soon.